It was the best of times. It was the best of times. For those of us born in the 70s that grew up in the 80s, the 90s were our college years. If you were like me and spent 9.5 years total in college, you spent the better part of the decade in college, at university towns, experiencing the culture of the 90s. The rise of rap music in the 80s had mellowed out in the 90s, but led to alternative rock and pop music. Young country had morphed into the country of Brooks and Dunn and others. Line dancing, honky tonks were everywhere. In America in the 90s, you could find anything from hip hop, dance clubs, socialization, very different from the way it is done now or not done now. You found diversity of opinion without people throwing things at each other or getting into brawls. It was an interesting time to be alive. We didn't know what we had. And on the hump of that, 1999, not realizing that it was the capstone to something that was going to become something else shortly, we got the great comedic and romantic film with an amazing soundtrack. It is timeless. It is Heath Ledger, Julia Stiles, Larissa Elena, Gabrielle Union, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, a whole host of others. I'm not going to remember all of them. 1999's 10 Things I Hate About You. There are so many ways that 10 Things I Hate About You captures America at that time, but also is timeless. When you take one of these timeless romantic stories, or really several of them, and blend them together, when you go to William Shakespeare, no less, for the details of these very ancient stories as told by him, updated to today, when you apply them to the now, it's all about how well you do it. 10 Things I Hate About You is unashamedly and unabashedly Shakespearean. Just in case you miss it, they reference it within the movie. The literature class is dealing with sonnets. It ends up being what the title of the movie is about, what the poem that puts the context of the movie is about. We have one of our protagonists dressed up like Shakespeare in order to go to the big dance at the end of the year, to go to prom with the girl that is obsessed, says she's involved with William Shakespeare, and shows up at the prom, looking for William. But in the background, all of the things that might strike you as odd about a romantic comedy of the 90s generally has to do with how well they pay tribute to William Shakespeare. The buildings at the school ground look very much Victorian. Many of the classrooms, we see Miss Perky's office, has stained glass windows. The classic sort of ambiance, though it says that it is Seattle, I believe, it looks sort of New England because it looks so vintage, so classic, but it is Shakespearean. Even presenting the neighborhoods as very much upper class or upper middle class, the very fancy homes where the doctor and his daughters, but these take the role of noblemen and their family. We have indications from Romeo and Juliet, and I won't even try to name them all. So many different names, place names, Patrick, Verona, Padua High School. We get Julia Stiles' character is Cat Stratford is referred to as the shrew. It is absolutely unavoidable that Shakespeare is everywhere. And possibly because Shakespeare did such a wonderful job of the human condition, of capturing both all the tragedy, the romance, the comedy that has been an integral part of our nature as far back as humans have existed on this planet. But Shakespeare takes those raw, emotional, basic motifs and applies them so well in his time that we are able to adapt him to our time, and he ends up bringing still so much to us that we inherited from him and how to look at this stuff. And so you end up with things that this is otherwise just a teen romance comedy. And all of the teen romance comedies of the era could be said to be derivative of Shakespeare. It's not real clear to varying degrees, at least how much they admit as much. But this one just really clicks. This is one of those films that I unashamedly have watched dozens of times. I watch it a lot when I need to see it. It's like having a favorite. A really good film is like having a favorite painting that you go and you gaze at when you need what that painting gives you. And a really good film is something you can pop it in and, boy, that sounded old, like a videotape. You can turn it on, you can start it streaming, and you can go back to it and experience that again, just like gazing at a portrait. 10 Things I Hate About You is one of those. The scenes all open and close in a way that is memorable. When you learn to quote it when you watch it long enough, but you know by the instant of the transition what's coming next. Everything sort of fits in this way that is just very enjoyable, entertaining, and delightful. The actors, the direction, everything about the presentation of the film, it gets that delicate line just right of when has it become too much about the romance? When is it too goofy or silly? Where does it cross the line into something that makes it feel tedious or uneven? 10 Things I Hate About You remains with this perfectly even tone throughout, which is a mildly amused, tugging at your heartstrings, but very poetically delivered. Very poetically delivered in all of the dialogue, the presentation, the way that the plot unfolds. It really is amazing stuff. Drawing on those Shakespearean motifs again, there's a little bit of Taming of the Shrew, and without the tragedy, Romeo and Juliet, there's Twelfth Night, there's A Midsummer Night's Dream, there's just a plethora of these classic stories and Shakespearean stories, but it's woven together so perfectly. And everything with the homes, with the scenery, with even some of the furniture, the columns in the doctor's house, it captures that sense that it is an update of Shakespeare. It gives it a classic ambiance while at the same time delivering something that is very current romantic comedy, and yet it does it so well that it stands out from all the others of the era, in my opinion. I love it. Watch it, love it, adore it. Let me know what you think. 10 Things I Hate About You.